Welcome to Reframing the Questions. I'm so glad you're here, and I hope this feels like a safe place for thoughtful conversation. Welcome back to Reframing the Questions. We will look at our second theological piece of our framework, which is grace before anything else. Now, we're going to look at John 8, verses 1 through 11, because it's just one of the best places in the Bible for unpacking grace, especially as it applies to the abortion conversation. And I don't want to suggest this happens to me all the time, because it doesn't. There's only 2 times this has happened. The first was with Psalm 139 that I talked about in the previous video. And then it happened again a couple years later in a very similar way. I don't remember what I was doing. I think just walking through the office, and I really did sense the Spirit, a sense of, hey, you know that story in John 8? And again, I was like, yeah. And I really sensed him say, that is how I see your work. Now, that was with the pregnancy organization, and I took that to heart and really dove into the story. The application shifts a bit when talking about how we have the abortion conversation, but not that much, because it's the same story, the same illustration of grace. So if you're not familiar with that passage, it basically says Jesus was teaching in a very public place, and the religious leaders brought in a woman, put her in front of Jesus and said, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. In the law, Moses commands us to stone such women. Now, what do you say? And then it clearly says they were using this question in order to have a basis to trap Jesus. That was their goal. So let's talk about everything wrong with this story. First of all, their goal was to trap Jesus. Their goal was not to see justice for the woman. And we'll see later how deep that runs. But let's just put that in our minds at how often this may happen in the abortion conversation. When they say, teacher, this woman was caught in the act, what does that mean? Who else was there? There would have been a man there with her. So why wasn't he brought with her? Because that's actually what in the law Moses commanded us, was that both people would be equally held accountable. So they not only weren't considering her, they told a half-truth about her. Again, another half-truth that can be so dangerous. And we can, as humans, do that. Misquote scripture, use half-truths. And it happened here. Because let's think about this. If they caught her in the act, how did they know where she was? Right? I mean, we don't know anything about the woman. We don't know her story. This little snippet suggests she could have even been set up, or they knew about this situation and went straight to it. It could have just been one of their friends. It could have been one of their number. She was used as a pawn. So a half-truth, the woman was used as a pawn, and all the responsibility for something that 2 people were doing, and possibly this whole group had a part of, all the responsibility was put on her. And we will actually look at this when we talk about our shared responsibility, which is the 4th piece of the framework. But I want to point out it starts here with grace because of what Jesus does. So picture the scene. It's probably loud, raucous. They throw the woman in front of Jesus. Boom. What do you say? What do we do? And Jesus just, it says he bent down and started writing on the ground with his finger. I mean, can you feel that? I can feel that calm. He de-escalates the situation. He writes on the ground with his finger. And it says when they kept on questioning him, who knows for how long, he finally stood up and said to them, let any one of you who is without sin cast the first stone. Then he bends down again and starts writing on the ground with his finger. At this, it says they started to go away, the older ones first, until only Jesus was standing there with the woman. So this is the first time he addresses her, and he says to her, where are they? Does no one condemn you? No one, she said. He said, neither do I condemn you. You can go now live a different life. So Jesus's way of interacting, this is grace. He is grace. It's so different because he is leveling the playing field. Now, the religious leaders would not have thought they were in the same league as this woman, which again, we can talk about in the questions. I see that happening all the time with Christians in the abortion conversation, sadly. So Jesus doesn't use the typical word for sin that's found in the New Testament. He actually uses a bigger word that's not seen that very often. So the typical word is one who misses the mark, and I don't even like to use the word sin. I'll be honest, it's been weaponized. So we'll just say missing the mark. That's what the Greek word means, missing the mark. This word, when he says he who is without sin, is a different word that means one who cannot sin, one who has never sinned. Man, Jesus introduces a concept here, which is he does not judge between how we stack up to each other. He doesn't do that. Who was the one there who was completely had never sinned? Him. He was the one. So he is not stacking us up against each other. He's more saying no human is in this category, right? That could never fail. That's only God. So this is so beautiful when we think about, and some of the questions I already have in mind to put in the question series deal with Christians asking me, what about the wrongdoing, right? What about the mistake? And just understanding what Jesus does here. When he turns to the woman and says, I don't condemn you, that's because he, the only one who was perfect, was going to pay for everything in her life, just like he paid for everything in my life, everything in all of our lives. Again, this is the goodness of God. This is how beautiful he is. And when he says to her, in some translations it says, go and sin no more. Again, that word can be weaponized. But with the whole story before it, what that really means is you get to live a different life. Again, we don't know what other people had done to her, but these Pharisees had emotionally and spiritually wronged her. And so he is telling her any other places where that's happened, anything she's done that, was not how she wanted to live, she gets to go live a new life because grace changes how we see ourselves, right? He's saying, you are so important. I know these people, what he's saying, I know these people thought you weren't important enough. Like they were okay with you being stoned. I mean, think about that, how little regard they had for her. But Jesus says, I see you. I value you, right? You matter. We all get to go live a new life. And when we start with this posture that every person is not only has equal value and equal dignity before God, but that we're all on this even playing field of grace, it shifts how we have conversations about abortion. And it shifts what we emphasize. And what it shifts is how we can step back and ask better questions. Better questions. So lastly, as we wrap this up, one question I get a lot from Christians is, well, what about grace and truth? Okay, sometimes we get nervous when we talk about grace. So let's look at that. That phrase is from John 1. It actually appears twice in John 1, and it is referring to Jesus. So it says the law came through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus. This means that grace and truth together don't contradict each other, and they're not the law. However, when people ask me this question, the truth they are referring to is, when do we tell people they did something wrong? Now, why is that what we think of first when we think of truth, right? There are so many truths we can bring into the abortion conversation, whether it's someone we disagree with in our family, whether we are thinking about how we might talk to someone who comes to us and they're in a situation that's difficult. What truth do we lead with? What truth does Jesus lead with? What does he lead with in the story? First, he asks her a question, which is super cool. That's why we're reframing questions. Jesus asks questions all the time. Woman, where are they? Does no one condemn you? And I wonder if he lets that sit. And then she says, oh, wow. She realizes for herself, no. And then he leads with the truth. Neither do I condemn you, right? The truth of who God is he is love. He is grace. He brings equal value. Let's have conversations full of grace and truth that actually reflect him and mean what the Bible says when it says Jesus embodies grace and truth together always. Thank you so much for listening to this. I hope you will watch the next video, which talks about how our shared values as Christians can come before politics. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be here for this conversation today.